and some of you wrote it some of you wrote it on the on your student card. I'm not saying there's a perfect solution. I just want you to realize the different perspectives, right, around the image and the journalist's responsibility. So the solutions here are, again, more my own opinion, and hopefully you'll get your own opinion in the process. So the first part today, I'll focus on the solutions for the famine pictures, right? So the pictures where you see all these poor kids starving. And then the second part, I'll use a movie to define journalists' responsibilities, so what a journalist should show, explain, or do. It's a movie called Up Close and Personal. It is a romantic movie, but it's based on two journalists, so you get to really learn about their job. And also an article from the New York Times about what they call immersion journalism. So we'll see what that means when we get there, okay? So first, the part about the pictures related to, as we saw week 12, these pictures have caused people to not react anymore. We see them so much that we're desensitized. So obviously my solution, I'd like the solution to take this into account, that you don't get desensitized, that you can still have feelings when you see them. And also don't reinforce stereotypes, because a lot of time the stereotypes attached to those pictures are pretty annoying, at least to me. And also my other goal is to make sure that if we're going to help, that it's not too late. Because basically when you see a kid with a big belly and the ribs right there and the super skinny legs, it's almost too late. So how can we take action before we get to that stage? Because I think it's a little silly to have to wait for so long. So those are my goals for the solution I am introducing. It's David Campbell. You got the reference in the first footnote, and it's rather new. It was published in 2012. And so this is what he says. We need to find compelling ways of narrating the story so that the political context, the whole context thing, of famine can be portrayed in a timely manner. So I got those three things. Those are kind of my three solutions to those pictures. So I'll explain them in details. Well, I'll explain each. Right? So the compelling ways of narrating a story, that's the first aspect. We saw that, yes, we are desensitized, but still some of us take action when we see these pictures. So the compelling part is what we see, right? The big belly, the ribs, the legs. Sometimes also the hair color changed to become light brown instead of black, because usually it's in African countries. And the empty eyes, right? I didn't want to use the picture we've been using, we've seen it enough. So that's the compelling part. So what David Campbell says is we do need this type of visual, right, to get us to react and do something. So we need to be convincing, we need to move people, that's the idea of, but the timely thing, right, that's for me where it kicks in. As I said, swollen bellies, it's too late for prevention. And if one thing does work with the UNDP, the United Nations Development Program, is that they have a very good way to, how can I say, to raise a flag, to say, be careful, this country is having a problem with food, things could get bad. So we actually, if we listen to the UNDP, we can get the information early enough to take action and avoid the famine stage. So the idea for me, and that's my part, right? It's not Campbell, so you can criticize all you want after. For me would be, we have so many pictures already of very skinny, starving kids. Why not use the information from the UNDP and use an old picture. We don't need to wait for the kids in that country to get skinny and unhealthy and all that for us to take action, right? So the idea would be use the current information, but use a picture from the past so that we can show what is going to happen if we don't take action. So that's the idea of timely manner. Reacting when they're already suffering is a bit, gets on my nerves, let's put it that way. So, yes, we need the visual, but let's try to take action early enough so that we don't have to get to a very ugly situation. And, sorry, I was reading that book when I was preparing the class, so it's a children's book, and if you're American, you may have read it. Depends. Perdue the Bold, Avi. Maybe you guys are actually too young for that. Sorry. It's an old children's book, but it's usually based on animals, which I usually hate, but that one was really good. I really enjoyed it. And he said something about history in the book that is what I think, right? We tend to live in the present and the future, but not really learning from the past. And if we could change that just a little bit, I think things would be much easier at all levels. Relationships, work, everything would help a lot. And so this is what it says in the book. So Curlew is the main character. So it says, Curlew Green, so big smile. Oh, the wonders of history. If you knew the past, you could predict the future. So that's kind of the idea, right? We have seen famines in the past. We know where this is going, right? From the past, we can predict what is going to happen. If it had happened, it could happen again. What had Monvoit said? The future begins in the past. So for me, I don't see an issue in using old pictures to talk about something that might happen because of that. We should learn from the past to take care of the present and the future as well. So the idea that we should learn from history. And, sorry, I'm having a formatting problem. Here we go. And for the political context, in the terms of famine, I'm not going to lie to you, it's not easy. So usually when students decide to choose that topic, I'm like, hope you're ready for some heavy reading, people, because it is pretty complicated. So you'll have to do research. It's not just doing a little quick internet search that is going to help you with that.
Usually, isn't it definitely varied by country, of course?
Exactly, right? So it's like, there's no general rule. We got to look at the specific situation. And as we did the week before we went on vacation, the perspective thing, right? Having more than one, because you need to understand it from different angles. There's the political, there's the humanitarian, there's the human side, and all of those sides you need to understand when you're talking about this. And on top of it, people get very defensive when it comes to giving money to poor people. So you need to be prepared to defend your opinion. I've had lots of issues with that, actually. And yes, also if you are sharing something that's new, people might not believe you. And again, you'll have to argue, right? So that research thing is definitely important. But understanding the political context so that people understand it's not just because the weather is bad. It is not just for that we have famines. So that's the idea, right? What David Campbell had in the book that for me made a lot of sense to think about what to do regarding. We still need those pictures, but we need more behind them. So the lessons would be compelling narration. So get people's attention. Yes, use their emotions, but not just that. Make sure that you do it timing that is going to be helpful, not just reporting a catastrophe, but trying maybe to prevent it in best case scenario. And also, not just the political context, if we don't just talk about finding pictures, but the context. Explain the picture, where it was taken, what was happening before, after, and all of that, right? Don't just take the picture and that's it, and give it a title. You need to explain the context. And that, for me, I truly believe worked for other issues. Think about the picture of the Syrian boy that was drowned on the beach. And we saw it everywhere, but the context was so vague that nobody ever talked about the mom who drowned and the older brother who drowned too. We only had the 3-year-old. Do you know which one I'm talking about?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It was on the front page of the Wall Street Journal.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Japanese. My wonderful Japanese. Do you know which one I'm talking about? Okay.
Wait, I'm thinking of the one.
Have you seen the new video? Have you seen the video "Starving in Syria"?
Oh man, I'm not sure. Sorry.
You're talking about.
There's like a new one that's like floating all over Facebook and people are sharing it, and it's showing like this 6-year-old boy who's like starving. He's like, "When is the last time you had food?" He's like, "Oh, it's been like 3 weeks now."
Yeah, you'd be dead if it
You're
was
talking
3 weeks
about the
back.
picture about where they washed up on Greece.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was I went to class just right
Yeah, that one. See? You just type that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, that thing. That's the one I'm talking about. It got me so freaking mad. Come on, people, help me. Sorry. Thank you, Delphine. I know you said it. That picture. Right? It was everywhere. So if you want to use that for your own analysis, please go for it, because you'll discover a lot of things behind that picture. All right? So, there you go. Did I depress everybody? Yeah! Sorry. I like doing that, yeah, you know. What was I going to say? Yeah, so those lessons, right, how we can deal with this type of ugly pictures. Now we have the picture of the drowned boy, so maybe we could use that in a way to prevent more drowning, which is not happening, but anyway, let's not go there right now. So that's what I wanted to share with you regarding the famine pictures. I'll let you discuss this. With me. So one of the things that, hang on, I personally underline the stuff that I find that I think are meaningful. So for me, it's on page 2 when Warren says, "I call the harbor master." Calling the harbor master is what reporters do. They don't just show up on the scene. So that's something that I usually get irritated by in the French media. They show up, they have no idea what happened, and they kind of try to give you information.
And they're filming a door, and they say, "This happened," and you're like, "It's a door."
It's a door. It's like, why are you filming the door? So yes. So getting specific information about the case, right? I think a journalist should not just try to guess, but actually get the real information about what he or she is reporting on. And sometimes it's just a phone call. It's not that difficult. So that's the first thing that Warren teaches Tally in this scene for me. The next one that I don't necessarily agree, but again, this is more for the perspective of the people using the news. Warren says, "Forget yesterday, yesterday's history, news happened today." Obviously, I talked about learning from history, so I don't quite agree, but the reality is, when you look at psychological tests, if you talk about what happened yesterday, or if you mention it's yesterday, people are less interested, especially nowadays with all the SNS, right? Look at a feed on Facebook or Twitter, how quickly it goes, who really looks back in time. So people like what is happening now. So without transforming reality, maybe making it so that people are interested because it is the now, right? So focusing on the now, which I do have a problem with. So forget yesterday, yesterday's history. News happened today. So that's the second thing that, for me, Warren teaches Tally. And then he gets a little mad at her because she's putting lipstick on, right? Okay, what are you doing? This isn't about this isn't about lipstick. This is about them, Roll Soda and Domingo Cats. I think she pronounces soda in a weird way. It's a T, wow, she's American. Anyway, so, I know. So news aren't about what the journalist looks like in this situation, right? Because she's doing the makeup thing, or how clever he or she sounds. And sometimes, if you listen to interviewer, they are actually never listening to the answers. They just have their clever questions, which makes the interview totally nonsensical. It just doesn't make any sense when you listen to people interviewing, because they just really, really want to sound clever, show how much they know about the topic they're talking about. So here in the movie it's the looks, or in other situations you might have the ego, the looking good, right, aspect. So for Warren, news aren't about that, they are about people. We should focus on what is happening to the people. So that's the number 3. On her case again, because she says, in the blue water of Miami today, if you've ever been to Miami, Miami is a huge city. And it's separated by the different beaches that you can go to. So he tells her Miami Beach today. It's a very specific part of Miami that you see in the movies usually. So again, being specific, not just general. Miami is a big place, so be specific. It is in Miami Beach. That is, it is happening. So like calling the harbor master, getting the specific. And then, do you have any idea what it's like to want something that bad? Then show me. And actually, this is a clever comment for if you watch the whole movie. Actually, Tally gets hired because she pretends that she has been doing the weather report for her local station, but the only thing is that one day she called the radio station telling them about a huge flooding happening in her part of town, and so she invents stuff to be able to be hired as a journalist because she really wants to be a journalist. So yes, she actually can understand the people who want something really badly, very strongly. So then show me, so the idea of putting yourself in the shoes of the people you talk about to be able to truly explain the situation. So putting yourself in the shoes of the people you're talking about. How do they feel? What do they think? What are they afraid of? What do they hope for? All these kind of questions. And he does, what did they die for? So what did they want? Basically a better life, because when you're from Colombia, the US looked like paradise. What did they want? What were they looking for in the US? Working in a restaurant. Bussing dishes means you take the dishes from the table and you bring them to the kitchen. Right? That's what you do in that situation. So put yourself in the shoes of the people you talk about. Try to think the way they do. Try to feel what they might have felt to be able to talk about it. That to me is what I would have loved to do as a journalist. And tell me a story. I don't know if, hang on. So yes, right, tell me a story, not just facts. So you got to pull the people, you got to interest them with details, with feelings, with emotions, right? Get them to listen to you. Stick to the facts, but in a story, so that they will listen to you. So these are the lessons that Warren is teaching Tally, and they fall in love, and he gets upset because he's a financial reporter and he's uncovering a lot of corruption, but he's every time shut down. Nobody wants to publish his articles, and so he decides to go into a war zone and he gets killed. End of the story. Sorry. It's awful. And she loses herself. Like, she wants to look good, she wants to look smart, she wants to all of that, and she completely forgets these lessons. That's a very important scene in the movie, actually. So, being a good journalist is not easy. There's lots of ego, there's lots of pressure, but I think that what Warren is telling Tally is, for me, what should be happening for good journalists, meaningful journalism. All right, so I'm not sure. Do you want to watch it again? No one goes, and Nathan goes, and Mark. Okay, come on. I need a clear answer. Yes or no?
Yes.
Oh, thank you. Sorry, Nolan, you lost. So, it's an article that it's only from, well, I guess 2 years ago now, but okay, a year and a half ago. It was in the New York Times in July, and the author, we worked as a freelance journalist, which means that he was paid by the word, right? So depending on the number of words he wrote, he got paid, and he was paid by the Associated Press, which is a news agency that's quite overwhelmingly powerful in the world. And what he shares in the article is his experience in the Democratic Republic of Congo, the DRC, where you had lots of people getting killed because of power struggle, as usual. And he was quite young. He was only 22 when he was there, right? So in 2005, 2006, he was 22. And what he has to say about his experience in the DRC is so different to what is happening now. And that's why I wanted to share it with you, because it really helped me understand how the news, how information is collected, how people get information about a conflict or a So for Sundaram, I'm not sure how you say his name actually, he thinks that journalists are no longer connected to the countries and people they write stories about. So the idea is that before, correspondents, so reporters, journalists, they would be in a country for at least a couple of months, some of them for years, right? The BBC has had people in almost every single country for many years, which means that these people know the place. But nowadays, what he's saying is that one single reporter can cover 20 countries. So they keep moving around. And that, for him, is a bad thing because they don't have a deep knowledge of the country they're talking about, they're writing about. And if we look at what we just saw with Warren, he said we need to put ourselves in the shoes of the people we write about. How can you do this if you arrive the day before an election, stay for 2 days, and then leave again? You'll never have that ability to put yourself in the shoes of the people because you just keep moving around and it doesn't give you enough time and information to do this. So if you have 20 countries to cover in a year, you can't do that. You can't put yourself in the shoes of the people. So that's why the Sundaram called his article, "We Are Missing the Story." What the journalists see is only a very small part of reality, and then they share it with us. So it's such a small part, but we think it's the whole truth usually, right? So that's also the problem. Another thing that he criticizes is that journalists are often staying in expensive bungalows or 5-star hotels. And he compares his experience in the RDC where he could stay for 2 months for the price of 1 night nowadays. So in RDC he was staying with a family, he lived with them and he gave them rent, and it was $300. And nowadays, yes, a 5-star hotel is about $300 if you're not in Saudi Arabia. It would be more expensive. And so the fact that they are staying in very special, secluded places, they're not with the local people. So again, how can they feel, how can they understand what the locals feel, the people who live the situation on an everyday basis? So that's another thing that he thinks makes the journalists miss the story, which means we miss the story, because we hear the story through the journalist's experience. So not staying long enough in a country, not being around the locals, and experiencing real life makes current journalists less reliable, I would say. And so the type of reporting is talking about, like, you know, staying in a country, knowing the local people, he calls it immersive reporting. And what he says is that immersive reporting is extremely important if we want to have a real sense of the world, not just a little tiny bit of it. And for me, the reality is that we cannot travel to all these places. We rely on journalists to go there and tell us what's happening. So this for me is the part that I don't like about current journalism, right? That they actually cannot give us a real sense because of the conditions in which they work. So something to think about if you're doing a bit of journalism. Yeah, Delphine, go for it. Sorry, you got to wave.
Can we teach local people to write stories?
That's what the BBC does.
Okay.
If they have a whole a program called Outlook, and what they do is it's mainly local, you know, people who get on the mic and explain what's happening, and sometimes it's pretty overwhelming because when it was in RDC actually also, and you had one of the priests that was protecting some of the refugees, and all of a sudden you could hear gunshots in the background. He's like, I've got to go because they're attacking us in the middle of the program. It's like, whew, okay, what do we do now? You know, it was, so, yes, so that's exactly why I like the BBC. So, great question. Thank you. I'm sorry. Thank you, Nolan, for, I got tunnel vision right now. So, to another thing that he says a little bit later on, he says that, yes, they cover dozens of countries, they have little knowledge of the context, and they leave sooner than later. They often miss the development of a specific story, right? So the idea of, especially recently, the whole election thing, you know, they come in the day before, they stay for 2 days, and then they leave. So they don't know what happened before and what really happens after the election. So all the corruption before the election goes bye-bye, and how the new president, minister, whatever, whoever is elected, how it's changing the life of people, they don't see it either. So again, we talked about how important context was with the family picture, and I think it's, as I said, for every type of topics, knowing the context and how the story develops, because especially in countries where the political situation is unstable, elections, for instance, can change things dramatically, and there should be people there to witness it and talk about it and report it and explain it. And clearly this is not happening with the current type of journalism. So, and and that's the last one that I like too. Because they don't live with the locals, they are not at least they don't know the locals, they're not held accountable for what they write. So my question is, do you think journalists would write the same way if they had to face the people they write about? Because it's really easy to start talking about a group of people as scary, dangerous, or wonderful, and super sweet if you never meet them.
That's something I was bothering in the video, like so much agitation about corpse. They need respect, and I was like, it's indecent.
Right, like the whole thing we talked about, Vietnam War picture, the concentration camp pictures, right? So that accountability, right, to the people we are talking about, and in the movie it was two dead guys who were desperate and jump off a ship even though they can't swim.
Journalists fighting to run.
Yeah, right, you're right. It's like
they are dead. They are not going away. It's okay.
They will stay there. So yes, exactly. So that to me, and this is something, especially if you like writing, think about the people you write about. If you had to actually show them what you wrote, I'm telling you, you would write very differently. Because I've been writing a lot about Tibetan refugees, and I always send my pieces to them, and that really helps me keep on track, not make it look too beautiful or too dramatic, and try to stick to reality. It really helps to do that. So even if you can't do it in reality, keeping it in mind when you're writing, what would the people I'm talking about react if they read what I wrote? So that's another thing that I think is a good lesson if you think about writing news and journalism in general. So my conclusion from all this, and I'm done. The conclusion from all this is that finding the truth, as we've been seeing over and over again during the semester, you have to read more than one source of news. Right? If you just watch Fox News, you'll never get to understand what's really happening. So watch Fox News and then watch a lot of other things just to see how people are reporting the news. And I know this is when you're going to go like, hey, she's a teacher, but read books. Books are more thorough. There is more research behind it. There's more checking. So yes, it's not instant like a newspaper article, but in the long run, I learn more from books than just reading the news. And meet people. And that's why I like talking about the BBC Outlook program, because you get to meet these people, these local people, listening to them talk about their situation. And for that, I think SNS are pretty amazing, because you can really connect with people from just about all over the place, except China. But, you can still connect to a lot of people. I had to talk about China one more time, right? I mean, come on. So for that reason, I think SNS are pretty cool. And yes, again, I know I've been telling you this a lot. Just as a reminder, the truth is a reality that you build from different sources of information, right? So keep that in mind when you watch the news or when you write your own news. So this is it. I will post the last assignment for this class, and you can finish it next week in class, but I just want you to have time to think about it. So please go to the website. I'm hoping Sunday morning. I will make it happen. I won't sleep again, but that's okay. Yeah, I'm jet lagged anyway, so class feedback, people, and I wish you a great weekend. Please keep your handouts because you're going to need them for the last assignment, okay? Thank you. Have fun.